Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. Hopefully you had a good Christmas and you're all starting to recover from the excesses. I'm just about getting there. And I thought today what I'd do is a review of something a little bit off the wall. It's a distro that was around in the early 2000s. It disappeared for quite a few years, but it's risen from the ashes. And it's now back in Google-inspired clothing. I think that's the best way I can describe it. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So Freespire. Perhaps I should start here with a little bit of history. All the way back 20 years, perhaps just a little under 20 years ago, there was a distro that was launched called Lindows. And obviously the name should give you the clue that it was something that intended to compete directly against Windows. It came with wine, it came with lots of multimedia codecs. This was still the early days of the polished Linux desktop for home users. And Lindows made great claims that you could run Windows software, that everything would just work out of the box. Now, you won't be surprised to know that everything wasn't quite as rosy in the garden as it suggested, but nevertheless, I did dip into Lindows at some point, and it wasn't a bad desktop, but they got themselves in trouble with Microsoft, and there was a big legal battle, and as a result of that, the outcome was a change of name to Linspire. And Linspire, I believe, was initially free, from what I can remember, but it pretty soon became a commercial distro, and they gave rise to a free version of that distro called Freespire. And Freespire was a community-run distro that carried on until I think it was about 2008, and then it seemed to disappear from sight. Now, another company that was around at the beginning of the 2000s was a company called Xandros, and I believe they bought Linspire at the time. And they kept it for quite a long time, all the way through to 2017, 2018. And then another company has stepped in since, and I'm just going to read their name here, called PC Open Systems LLC. And they bought Freespire from Xandros. And I believe they bought Linspire from Xandros as well. Okay, all very confusing. But bottom line is, whilst it disappeared in 2008, and I'm looking here at the Distro Watch page, we had a distribution release of Freespire 2 back in 2007. There's a big hiatus then, and then suddenly they came back in 2018 with Linspire 7. Now, they've not exactly been releasing left, right, and centre. We had Linspire 7 and then Freespire 7.7 back in July of 21. And then I noticed at the beginning of December, we had the release of Freespire 8. So it looks like they're trying to get things going again. We've had a big hiatus since 2008, and then suddenly, 12, 13 years after, we've got Freespire emerging from the ashes again. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, well, I've got to give it a try, because I did use Freespire for quite a while, and I thought it was a decent operating system. At some point, I think it was based on Debian, and then it moved over to Ubuntu, and I don't know the history exactly. It's quite complicated, but I know at its time it was quite popular. So let's go and have a look at the new Freespire website and see what it's all about. So you should see in front of you the Freespire webpage here at freespire.net. And you'll see there that 10th of December 2021, Freespire 8 GNOME is released. Well, when I originally downloaded this, it was before this date and GNOME hadn't been released, and I downloaded an XFCE version. So I'm just going to move to that, which was on December the 5th, so it was probably around that date. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm not going to review a GNOME distro, so I'm going to stick with XFCE here. And as it says here, the team has released Freespire 8, an update which delivers much-needed system enhancements and security fixes. We've included all the most requested Google services, Calendar, Docs and Gmail, and we've let users decide regarding this. So they're essentially saying they've asked the users, what do you want? And the users have come back and they've said, we want all of these Google services. And you can see here what the distribution includes. So Chrome, ICE, Dream Chest, Gmail, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Google Translate, Google News. It's a Google-centric distro. It's based on Ubuntu LTS. I believe it's got quite a few PPAs included though as well. And from what I can see, it doesn't have a huge amount of information here, but the screenshots look quite nice. Linspire is obviously on here as well, and you can certainly go to Linspire, and I believe Linspire has links to all sorts of commercial software, but it's going to cost you $32.99 in dollars if you want it. And I don't want to do that. I just wanted to go with the free version. So this is what I downloaded. They do ask if you'd like to purchase this for $15.99. And you may, if you enjoy the distro, want to bung them some money, but I would suggest you give it a spin first and see what you like. I have to say here that I'm not that struck really by the web page. It looks a bit basic. I know these have been around for quite a long time, but nevertheless, you know, you think if they were going to get a distro up and running, they would have put a little bit more work into the web page, which just looks like, well, a pretty standard template, to be honest. You've got an FAQ there. What is the difference between Linspire and Freespire? And as it says, Linspire is a commercial product. What hardware does Freespire require? 64-bit, 4 gig of RAM and at least 20 gig hard disk space. That's not too bad. And it gives you a little bit more information there. There's a support blog, which goes through various bits and pieces. And I also noticed that they do have some forums. And if I open up the forums, the first thing that struck me is they're obviously just at the very beginning. There's not a huge amount of posts here. Not by any stretch of the imagination, but they are starting to get there, I suppose. So I'm all for people creating distros, and this new company has now taken over Freespire and Linspire, and they're trying to make inroads. I found it by accident, I'll be honest. It appeared on Distro Watch, and I thought, well, I'll give it a spin. But let's see how they're doing. I suppose what I'm expecting to see here with all the Google-centric stuff that's included is something that's a little bit like Chrome OS, but it's also a full Linux distro. So it'll give you something like Chrome OS, but it'll also give you full Linux as well, so you can install whatever you want. So without messing about any further, let's get into it. Let's fire it up in a virtual machine. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so I've just booted the Freespire ISO, and no problems at all. It booted fine, straight into a full HD screen on VirtualBox, and this is what you're greeted with, which is a very nice, I have to say, a very nice, clean-looking XFCE desktop. And you can immediately see down here on the panel, I presume this is the panel anyway, yeah, it looks to be, that, yeah, they've gone all out for Google integration. So we have Google Docs, the Google Calendar, Google Drive, Gmail, and Chrome. We also have Rhythmbox, videos, whatever program that happens to be, and the file manager, which I assume is going to be Thunar. Yeah, I'm not very keen on the default quite light theme, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get on anyway and install it, and we'll come back and have another look afterwards. So up in the top left, we have Install Freespire. And I am assuming, given that this is based on Ubuntu LTS, that this is going to be the Ubiquity installer. So it's selected English as default, which is all good. English UK we want as a keyboard, so that's continue. And it seems to be taking a little bit of a while to sort itself out, but nothing worse than anything else. Download updates whilst installing Freespire. Yes, I think we will. And install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi and additional media formats. Interesting, because on the web page it said that there were no non-free codecs included. But hey, we'll click the box and see what it does. And we'll move on now. And eventually it will sort itself out and move on to the next page. And there we are. What do we want to do? Erase disk and install Freespire. On the advanced features, we can set up LVM or we can use ZFS. I don't want to do any of those things. I would quite like the option to decide whether or not I want some swap space, but let's just install now and see what it actually says I'm doing. So it's created an ext4 partition by default, which is fine by me. And I then get my time zone, which it's correctly selected, London. And it's time to enter my name. So fair password. Well, that'll do. I don't want to log in automatically, so let's just continue. And hopefully this is going to start. Right, guys, I'm not going to put you through this. You've seen this all before. We'll come back once it's installed. Right, and we're back. So that was pretty painless. No real issues. Didn't take very long. I rebooted and you're straight into this light DM screen, which is using the default wallpaper by the looks of it. So very pleasant, nothing not to like really. I've already logged in once and I've run the upgrades and I've installed HTOP, but other than that, let's go again. Helps if I get the focus on this virtual machine screen. And as you can see, as soon as we log in, we're pretty much looking at exactly how it looked when we looked at the live ISO. I need a terminal just to run HTOP, so there we go. There's the terminal emulator, and let's just run that and see where we're at. So 493 megs out of the box, with a brand new login. It's about average. I've seen XFC run a lot lighter, but on the whole, it's not really an issue. So let's have a look then. So we've got all of these little ice apps down the bottom, or I presume they're ice apps. So if I go to Google Docs, I presume it's going to open up an integrated web browser, and absolutely there it is. and you would sign in with your normal Gmail email address and password. And exactly the same with Google Drive, Gmail, and Google Chrome. In the menu itself, let's have a look at what you've got. So if we look at accessories, you've just got the standard stuff that you would expect to see. Games, you've got chess or dream chess and patience. In graphics, you've just got a document scanner, color paint, and Ristretto image viewer. So the GIMP or nothing like that's there at the moment. On internet, no Firefox at all by default. I don't have a problem necessarily with Google Chrome, and I suppose if you are quite Google-centric, and this is why you'd pick this distro, to be honest, Google Chrome may be what you're going to use. What you do have, though, is a link here also to ICE. And for those of you who haven't come across ICE before, it's quite a nice little application. You name your application, you enter the web address, you decide where it's going to go in the menu, you select an icon, or you allow the program to use the favicon from the site, and you can even create an isolated browser profile if you want. Just out of interest, I did this before, and if I go to Office, I created an ICE link, and here we go, we're straight in there, Steve Annelly's OneDrive. And if you use Microsoft Office online, and I know many people do, certainly if you haven't bought the, if you're running Windows and you haven't bought the actual Office 365 package to install locally, the web version of Office is actually pretty good, I've got to say. As someone who has to use Microsoft Office at work, but prefers to use a Linux PC whenever I get the chance, I must admit I tend to use the Office online suite quite a lot. My company that I work for is completely Microsoft, to the extent that even my hard drive is mapped to a version of OneDrive, so it just makes things easy for me. So if you're very web-centric, that's a good thing. What else have we got here? Let's have a look. So we've looked at games, we've looked at graphics, we've looked at internet. Most of these things, you know, Google Translate, Google News, it's all very Google-centric. In media, you've got Rhythmbox, XFburn, again, if you've got a CD or DVD drive still. And what is the videos app? Let's have a quick look and see what it is. Totem. Okay, so it's the GNOME media player, essentially. What else? Office. Well, there's nothing there by default other than what I've just added, Microsoft Office. But you have got Google Docs. You're, of course, using Ubuntu LTS, so if you want to install LibreOffice or something similar, well, you can obviously do that. What about settings? Just all the standard stuff. And the system, again, you've got your task manager, which is your standard XFCE task manager. So all pretty much what you'd expect, to be honest. There's not a huge amount of applications here. It's quite a lightweight system from what I can see. One thing that I did notice was that Synaptic is meant to be installed, but in actual fact, it doesn't seem to be in the menu. But if I open a terminal emulator and search for Synaptic, you can see Synaptic pkexec is there. Have I spelt that right? No, I haven't. I've got one extra N. So, but that should now work. And Synaptic is there. Strange that they haven't put it in the menu. I can only assume that for some reason they've not included a desktop file. Why they would do that, I'm not really sure, but it's easy enough to create a desktop file should you so wish. So let's have a look at the things that may well interest you in terms of available wallpaper. Okay, so you've got a decent selection here. They're not just the standard XFCE wallpapers. And as you can see, quite a few nice ones, including, I noticed, I think this is the Windows 11 wallpaper. And as much as I'm not a fan of Windows, I do actually like that wallpaper. I think it looks quite good. But you've got lots of other choices here as well that you can choose should you so wish, including that one. I quite like that one, to be honest, but hey-ho, we will just have a little click around and see what else is here. Go on, let's set the Windows 11 wallpaper. It's quite a nice looking desktop. There's not a lot to talk about in terms of standard XFCE, but let's just have a look at the software and updates and see what sort of sources it has in here. So yeah, it's Ubuntu. It's Ubuntu LTS version. What you do see, though, as you go in here is a whole ream of PPAs. So they have the LibreOffice PPA installed, even though LibreOffice isn't installed. Yanubuntu, not a clue. Boot Repair, I've no idea what that is. Xubuntu Staging. Chrome, it's got the Chrome repo. The Papyrus repo for, obviously, your icons. QCAD, no idea. And various other things, including Gambus. So I'm always a little bit worried about too many PPAs there, and there does seem to be quite a lot. Let's just kind of finalize this by looking in settings and seeing what sort of themes are installed to start off with. So this is your control panel, and it looks pretty standard from what I can see. Let's go into appearance and see what we've got. So we have Arc installed, and that's the default. I would always go for the Arc Dark theme, and I just think that looks much better. So presumably now if I open up a file manager, it certainly looks better to me. I obviously need to sort out the window at the top. What about icons? You've got a few here. You've got the humanity icons, Papyrus Dark, Papyrus Light, Ubuntu Mono Dark, Ubuntu Mono Light. Let's just pick the Papyrus icon theme for the sake of argument. They've got the elementary themes there. I can't say I'm a great fan of them. Let's just stick with Papyrus. Okay, fonts. Noto Sans, well, of course, it's Google-centric this, so you'd expect that anyway. Let's go back to the main desktop. Now, I can never remember whereabouts you actually set this part of the window in XFCE. Is it here, Window Manager Tweaks? I doubt it, to be honest. Could it be this? Arc Dark? Yes, it is. So it's in the standard Window Manager menu. And there, of course, are all your shortcuts and your focus and everything else. So it doesn't actually take much to get this looking as you might like it to look. And if you're quite Google-centric, well, it might be just the thing that you want. There's not a lot to say about it, really. I've been running this for perhaps about 6 weeks in a virtual machine, and I have been using it for work. It's been as solid as a rock. What is its unique selling point? Well, its unique selling point is probably the fact that it's Google-centric. Other than that, it's Ubuntu LTS. Is that enough to justify having a distro that just does this? Well, ultimately, that's going to be down to you to decide, but it's good to see an old distro kind of rise from the ashes. I do think, though, they need to do a little bit more to make it something special, because at the moment, you could get everything here from a standard Xubuntu install. Let's have a chat anyway. So, that's Freespire. My thoughts, it looks fine. It's obviously got its market for people who use Google. It's nothing special. It really isn't. It looks quite nice. It's all about theming. And if you like the ice apps, well, it might be for you. Having said that, there's nothing you couldn't do with the likes of, Xubuntu to turn it into this, essentially. So it's not unique, but nevertheless, early days again for Freespire, so we'll see what other editions and other releases bring in the future. But if you'd like to give it a spin, why not? I found it pretty solid over the last 6 weeks or so, and you might like to just give it a try. So that's it for today, guys. We've got the new year coming up again, of course, and you'll see I've got my Slackware hat on today. So I'm hoping we're soon going to see a Slackware release. I hope. And if that happens in the month of January, which I'm really hoping it does, obviously I'm going to do a Slackware review. So that's it for today, guys. Please, if you like the video, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com OldTechBloke. I'd like to, as normal, say thank you to all my existing Patreons: Robert, Aristotelis, Mike, Ty, Forrest, Patrick, Glenn, Magnus, Darren, Mislav, Chris and James. Thanks, guys. Your help is much appreciated. And I'll see you next week, guys.